Small town. Damn, that's you strictly. Small town. Damn, that's you strictly.
The Broncos beat the Chiefs in Denver late October last year. That was the last time they met until today. 35-yard field goal Lutz. Fraboni the snap, Riley the hold, Lutz the kick to win it. Oh! Blocked! The Chiefs have won! The Chiefs have won!
Welcome back to the All Things Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Julian. I'm here with my co-host, Kev, right here. EP is not with us tonight. He's busy, but he's with us in spirit. Best believe he's working, though. As you guys seen, what they're saying is black magic. What they're saying is the devil's work. Some are just calling it Patrick Mahomes' greatness. The Chiefs, Kev, they get another win, remain undefeated. Something the Hurricanes couldn't do this week, which we'll talk about later. Unfortunately for them, they dropped in the poll. But the champs are still undefeated, best record in the league. And, man, I just want to ask you a couple things because when we look at this Chiefs team, we see the imperfections, right? We understand that they're, one, not healthy. Two, Patrick Mahomes is struggling this year and just playing a little below his, or maybe even a lot below his standard. We've seen Travis Kelce play below his standard this year, maybe looking a bit older or a step slower. With all that being put together, we've also seen one of the best defenses in the league. And so, if not the best defense, do you think if this next week they get past Buffalo at 425 in Buffalo, the Chiefs can go undefeated this season?
I mean, that's definitely the toughest game from the looks of it on their schedule at this point. So I think it get interesting. They do have Houston down the line in Pittsburgh, who we just saw have a big win yesterday against Washington. So I do think those teams have a shot to beat them. The Chargers are also in a division game against them. You never know what happens there. They do have to see Denver again one more time, who obviously took them to the wire. Yeah. So could be a redemption story for Denver there if they get to that point. But I mean, Mahomes just finds a way every week, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of his performance. Like when it comes down to it, if he has the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter in a one possession game, uh, he's he's got, well, every time this year he's gotten it done. So it just seems like he's when he's in, it's become the new Tom Brady essentially. When he's in that position in the fourth quarter, down a possession, like you want to have a two possession lead on that guy at all times,
Yeah.
and even that's not safe. But uh, yeah, so I do think if they get past Buffalo, they definitely can run the table. Like you can't even say they've been that good because they haven't. But the defense has been that good, um, and the offense has been up and down. It looked like last week with DeAndre Hopkins, they found something there, but uh, again, that came. I think he had 44 catches for 30 around 33 yards or something yesterday. So, um, but Denver's a great defense. They've got a great defensive front, third in the league in pressures going into yesterday, second in sacks in the league. So uh, that's obviously going to cause some trouble for any quarterback on any team. But Mahomes is just great enough to get it done,
Yeah.
and he does it time and time again.
Yeah, I think that Brady comparison is super on point. Just as far as, you know, clutch factor and time of possession or time in the game when he's down and he needs to score. They do have Buffalo next week in Buffalo, like I mentioned. After that, I feel like they get a break for 2 weeks where they go to play the Panthers and then the Raiders. And that Raiders game is technically always like a, you know, divisional game.
Yeah.
It's always a physical game. I'll give them that. It's not always competitive, but it is always a physical game. This was going to be on Black Friday, I believe, at 3 p.m. So kind of an off schedule. You know, are the Raiders going to be able to get the one up on them during a week where the Chiefs should, you know, win this game? Um, I don't think that's going to be the case, but I do think the Chiefs are going to roll through the Raiders, Chargers, Browns, and then you know when they play the Texans. At that point of the season is when I'll really start to believe the undefeated narrative because we got to see what Texans team comes out by December 21st there, and that's going to be in week 15, 16,
Yeah.
week 16, and so reason I bring up the Texans is because last night we saw them on Sunday Night Football choke away, you know, what was a win. A 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, I believe, right? They had that in the fourth, or was it in the third?
I believe it was in the fourth. Yeah.
Right. So, cause I feel like I stopped watching the game for a minute. I picked up my PlayStation Portal, played a little bit, and then I put the game back on, and I just was like, what happened? So, somewhere along the line, obviously going back and seeing what happened, somewhere along the line, the Texans to me just let it get out of hand as far as the mistakes, because we could talk about the turnovers, right? And this wasn't a game of if you didn't turn the ball over, you weren't going to win because on both sides it was sloppy. However, the Lions didn't let that ultimately decide how they were going to attack the game or win the game. And I think with the Texans, you know, watching CJ Stroud struggle making bad throws, making bad decisions, getting pressured, we saw the Texans kind of look. How do I explain this? You know, the Lions through the interceptions and turnovers kind of stood the same. You know, they looked like the Lions. There was no wavering in them. But to me, with the Texans, that's why I keep saying crumble because you literally saw them kind of regress and play a little different style football as the game kept going. And I think that they just laid down at the end and let the Lions really just walk back down and take the win from them.
Yeah. I mean, Detroit. So I'm watching the game, and from halftime on, basically, by the time I got home and was able to turn on the TV and start watching the game. So I watched the game going into the half, and you see Jared Goff throw a pick to end the half, and then you see uh, them come out their next drive and throw a pick, and then Stroud throws a pick, and then Goff throws a pick, and then it was like back and forth. It looked
Yeah.
like a game of Madden. Like it reminded me of
Yeah.
Madden. You just going back and forth with your friend,
Yeah.
like and throwing pick for pick, and then but to Detroit's credit, like you have to give Jared Goff credit. Like throwing five picks, you're down 16, and you're still able to figure out a way. to bring your team back and lead them on three scoring drives to end the game to win the game. So uh, y- throw your fifth pick at that point. It's like, all right, it's not my day. Most guys would hang their head. A lot of guys would get benched,
Yeah,
but Dan Campbell stuck with Jared Goff. I actually saw yesterday. I think they said on the broadcast going into halftime down 10 plus points. The Lions had not won a game under Dan Campbell going into halftime down 10. And so yesterday, you talk about like the new Detroit.
yeah.
That's
This
what it
is
is. This
Yeah,
right,
and
like,
and that's funny. One of those stats had to give because I saw a stat. I don't know exactly how it went, but it was Jared Goff is undefeated in games where he throws, I think, either four or more interceptions, and it's like 4 to 5-0 or so. So it's like I, I don't know. I don't know how to explain. Being able to have the mindsets of continue to fight and battle and have the confidence through that adversity because throwing an interception in the game is deflating, right? But if you're a pro, uh, you can get past that. Next play, second pick, it's like all right. Third pick is like everybody starts to look at you now. It's not the defense made a nice play or the receiver. This is pick number three. So throwing two more after that moment, but then still having the weight of the world on your shoulders with walking with your chest up and being able to go down on a game-winning drive and deliver your team the field position for the kicker who was cut, from Houston, which is pretty cool. And
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 is a hometown kid too.
yeah, he got his revenge there in Houston, and so that was pretty cool. I think that it's all just coming together, much to like you said with that new Lions mentality, culture, locker room. Everything seems to be smooth sailing over there, and it was tough. There was moments last year even where it was like, are we going to fire the DC? Like our defense is horrible to start that season. That Lions defense was like, what are we doing? Um, but they figured it out. Aaron Glenn's still there, Ben Johnson's still there, and they're just complimenting each other week in and week out, and that's led them to this 8-1 record. So for me, that's the NFC favorite. We talked about the 9-0 team in the AFC. Those are the two people at the top right now that, although I don't believe the Chiefs are the best team in the league, I do think the Lions and the Ravens are better than the Chiefs. I'm not going to give the Bills that because they can't even beat the Chiefs, but I'll give them those two teams over the Chiefs. We can say, those are the top teams contending for the Super Bowl in their respective conference right there. So shout out to them.
And
Uh,
this is like for the Bills, this could be like the season that Giannis won a championship. Like all the talk all that season was, it started to come to that point where people were asking, can this guy win?
yeah,
And they quietly had a great season, and then nobody picked them to win the championship, but they did. And Buffalo's at that point where it's like, can Josh Allen get it done? And they're quietly having a really good season. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can keep it going and going into the playoffs and ride the momentum. But even with Houston, like, I think it sucks that Stroud clearly is struggling with his weapons right now. And granted, there's a talk of you being an elite quarterback. You have to live up to that, whether you have your guys on the field or not. But losing Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs for the season, Nico Collins will be back eventually. But having those two guys out is tough, and you can see it in the offense. They don't score a point, excuse me, in the second half. So, yeah. So I unfortunate in Houston, I think, because they were looking like a top threat in the AFC as well before the injuries.
I think we got to remember too. C.J. Stroud is just a sophomore, right? Second year quarterback. This is not a 5-year vet. He didn't get his check. This kid came in last year and just blew the league out the water, and now we're expecting them to be a top three team in the AFC. Not literally, but it's talked about like that, where Houston has this Super Bowl, potential around them, and so I think that by losing Collins losing Diggs, having an offensive line that's struggling, we can see the difference between a Josh Allen, right, losing his receivers in free agency, but also being a 6-year, 7-year player. Patrick Mahomes losing his guys and still being able to overcome that, obviously because both sides of the ball complement each other. But him being the veteran he is, C.J. Stroud is a young quarterback, and he's playing like a young quarterback too for the last 3 to 4 weeks. Ever since that Green Bay game, he's struggled a lot, and a lot of it is due to, like you said, I'm not excusing the fact that, I do understand the fact that his two best talents are out at the receiver position, plus the O-line is struggling and they're not healthy. However, through that, you're still expected to be a professional. And I do think it's okay for him to be young, and learn through this. I think this is going to be a good time for his career when he looks back at it. Like, man, I really had to figure things out, when we were supposed to win, but you're really not. Because there's no pressure on the Texans to, not win a Super Bowl this year, And so, but there is like that fake pressure from fans, and there's a fake pressure from like the casuals who's like, they did so good, and C.J. Stroud's rookie of the year. But at the same time, that we still understand that that's an organization that has just gotten to this point, and they found it. So they're trying to now it's time to talk about how we're gonna maybe make one or two. They've made the moves, but like to me, this is not a Super Bowl winning team. It's not. Like last year, we saw them lose to the Ravens the way they did in the first round, and they got a lot over the offseason, but I don't think that pushes the needle that we're gonna say Lions, Kansas City, Buffalo, they can beat them. Not just yet, in my opinion. So I think, like I said, all in all, this will be good for C.J. Stroud to be able to learn from and get through. And later down the line in his career, he'll be able to use times from this moment to be, I guess, wiser as a quarterback in his play. So we spoke about Buffalo just for a quick second. You mentioned that they've been having a sneaky good season, and hopefully they can continue to ride the wave. They were able to get another win yesterday, and they're looking like they're going to ride that wave. I want to know who they play for the next 3 games. Obviously, they got Kansas City next week at home, but I got to see who they're playing. They got Kansas City, and they got the 49ers, Rams, and the Lions. Yeah, so I remember talking about this where they have this stretch of games here that's going to be really tough. So that wave they were riding, and let's be honest. Let's be all the way honest. They lost to that struggling Texans team, and ever since that loss, they haven't lost. Now, that was an overtime, bonehead, play calling type of loss that they could have won that game. They then go on to beat your Jets. They then go on to beat one of the worst teams in the Titans. They then go on to beat another bad team that's struggling, Seahawks. They then go on to beat Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins in Tua Tagovailoa's return in Buffalo. And then they go on to beat the laughingstock of the league, the Indianapolis Colts, this Sunday. So we're giving the Bills a lot of credit, and I think they deserve a ton of it. They beat the Dolphins earlier in the season with Tua. Respect. I mean, they own the Dolphins. I talked about that with EP last week. They beat a Cardinals team who has come along. This was week 1, and the Cardinals took them to 34-28. It was a close game all game, and it was a one-possession game. They beat the Jaguars, and they beat the shit out of the Jaguars 47-10. They play the best team in the AFC, in my opinion, the Baltimore Ravens, and they lost 35-10. And we saw at that moment on Sunday Night Football, okay, this Ravens team is legit, and this Bills team has to figure out what they're going to do to replace Diggs and Davis. Because right now, and I'm speaking for at that point in the season in week 4, it's got to get figured out. And then they lose, to the Texans, and we kind of gave them the bailout again. Well, Josh Allen's got to figure out what he's going to do with no weapons, just Khalil Shakir there. Now they've gone on to win 5 straight games, and we're looking at them like, amazing. And you have to give credit. A win is a win in the league. But right now is where we're going to see what type of team this is going to be in the playoffs. because Bills, Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Bills, Rams, Bills, Lions. That's a tough month of football. That's a tough month of football. And so, Kev, my question to you is what is the record going to be after these next 4 weeks? Chiefs, Niners, at home both, and then go on the road to LA to play the Rams and to Detroit to play the Lions. How do they come out of this next 4 game stretch, which I think is going to be crucial for them in the AFC?
I think that they end up splitting.
Okay.
Uh, so I think they go 2-2 in those two games, which would put them at what is
10,
that, 10-4,
10-4. 10-6. 10-6. They've got four. Oh no, they only got two
two
losses.
losses,
Right.
8-2. So yeah, so I think they split those two. I think I I could see Kansas City losing uh this week to Buffalo. Like it's tough to go. It was tough to go 16 games. Now you got to go 17 games. But like it's a game that Buffalo is like in position to win before they even play. Like it's at home. Kansas City's been getting
Yeah.
you got to be lucky to go
Yeah.
undefeated. They've been getting a little bit lucky. So yeah, so I think this is a week that they could walk in there and Buffalo can just have the crowd behind them uh and pick up a win and maybe they beat Kansas City in the regular season before. It's the playoffs where they just can't figure it out. But yeah, I think they can get a win there. The 49ers have been so up and down. Christian McCaffrey's back, but he does not look like himself. Granted, it was his first week back, so hopefully he can get back to his normal form. I'm sure, regardless of him being on the field or not, it'll take him some time to get back in game shape and get things going again. So that could be a game where third game back, you might see him back to normal and that team start to get it going.
Yeah.
Whether hopefully Debo's not putting his hands around a long snapper's neck, but that Lions game feels like the Lions take that one at home. Even though like these games between these good teams sometimes just go one way that you don't ever see it going. Like I could see Kansas City coming in and steamrolling Buffalo this week, and then Buffalo going into Detroit and steamrolling Detroit. So uh yeah, I think regardless of how it happens, I think they split 2-2. That's a tough little stretch, especially having to travel to LA to play, a team that might not be one of the best in the league, but it's still gonna give you a
Yep.
tough time every time you play them.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as they don't come out of there 1-3, because that's going to be a really telling thing for me. Like, if I see this Bills team really can't beat the good teams, like, are they last year's Dolphins? That's kind of what I'm going to put on them, because your resume matters, as you know. It's not college football, so it doesn't matter as far as standings. You're going to be ranked accordingly as far as your wins and losses, but it matters when you can see, okay, that's what they're doing. They're not really beating the teams that are competing for the gold, so, or silver in this case. You mentioned Debo mushing a long snapper, and I want to talk about that. To me, there were two like losers of the weekend. If we might, I wouldn't start a segment, loser of the weekend segment, because I feel like that would just generate a lot of hate and negative feedback. But losers of the weekend have to be Debo Samuel and Micah Parsons. And I just think that each of them have to just be better teammates and better leaders of their groups. Those are guys who are captains of their team and who also both have a podcast. But it's never for me as a someone who's played organized sports. In general, I don't think that, and the way I view sports and sportsmanship, I never think that it's okay to punk or embarrass your teammate in front of your competition. I think that if you got a problem with your teammate in practice, you know, and y'all go at it and y'all want to fight or y'all want to whatever you got to do. You want to mush a teammate. Keep that shit in the locker room or keep that shit on the practice field. But like bringing that to the sideline of a game in front of fans, in front of the people you're trying to compete against, as a leader on the team, I mean, what's next now? You know, that's like it's like we got a substitute teacher or something. What's going on? Like, and so Debo Samuel obviously was upset about how Moody missed 3 field goals. I'm not sure if this long snapper had something to do with the misses or if he was just jawing back and forth with Debo about it, having his kickers back. Whatever the case, they weren't on the same page, and so yeah, I mean, he mushes him in the face, and it's just like he to me he owes him an apology, which he probably did, whatever the case. But I think you got to apologize and just going forward, like try not to let your emotions get the best of you. Obviously, I'm saying something that's as obvious, but it's how I feel. It made me feel like, damn, yo, like because I like Debo Samuel, you know what I'm saying? I respect him, but to me, something like that, that's just corny. That's just mad corny, and it's just like I can't fuck with that. If I see Debo make a 75-yard touchdown when he ran over 2 dudes and broke 2 other tackles, like I'm gonna come on here and talk about it. So to see Debo mush a teammate as a leader of that group and a team that has, they won that game, and thankfully they won that game because their season would have been in some deeper shit had they not won that game. Um, they've got a divisional game next versus Seahawks, who are desperate to get a win. They got the Packers and they got the Bills, and that's the 49ers schedule I'm talking about. Then the Bears. That's a break. But so they gotta muster up right now, and that type of energy. Had they lost, I think we're talking about a whole different outcome. Like, did this team just tank out? Did this team just give up on the season? Is that what's happening right now? But thankfully, the kicker and the long snapper contributed to winning the game last night for them, and they're not being talked about in that light. But they do have a tough schedule ahead, so I would like to see Debo Samuel lead by example next week against a division opponent. Put his health, aside, and at home go crazy against the Seahawks and be the reason you guys win. If we look at the stat sheet and you guys didn't win, but you contributed, your teammates could look at you and say, well, you know what? Debo was on his shit today. And if you do win, obviously, if you're a part of the game playing the ball out, then do that. But you guys got to get a win here next week, and I don't think you can let that moment. And maybe I'm over exaggerating. Tell me if I'm wrong, Kev, but don't let that moment of the season define you guys because when shit starts to get ugly, if it does, I promise you that is going to be a big topic or a talking point and ammo, toward the 49ers for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I don't definitely don't think hands should be put on a teammate on the sideline of a game like that. You want to go at it verbally with him. I think that's all heat of the emotion, heat of the game. We saw it happen with Jimmy and Spo a few years back on the sideline mid game. They didn't hold back from anything because they were in the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just gets to that point in the game where frustrations take over and uh, you got to say what you got to say in the moment. And we saw them make a run to the Eastern Conference Finals that year. So it's not like
But
that.
I do have to cut you off in the sense that Jimmy and Spo argued. Spo threw a clipboard. There was no, and then Udonis Haslam and Jimmy had the back and forth where they was like, "Yo, UD's like, I'll whoop your ass right now."
Yeah.
UD didn't go and
No, no,
Spo
no.
didn't. You know what I'm saying? So it's like as much as that can, yes, there is room to argue. There is room to be on different pages. It's just you cross the line when you getting physical with your team, especially in the face. Like you didn't even push them. You literally just mushed them and walked away. Like, yo, on TV, bro, that's crazy. My fault.
No, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I don't think hands should be put on
Yeah,
if you need to say something, but
yeah,
to put hands on a teammate in that moment is you know I think unacceptable for
yeah.
me. I'm sure the 49ers have talked to Debo about it and something has come of it. I'm sure they've hashed it out I hope they have. They got to be in the same
Yeah.
locker room together for the rest of the season. So I hope that they've been able to come together and address it with each other. You also mentioned Michael Parsons, uh, the comments that he made, and I just read them right before we got on the show. And my first thought is, the first comment you make is that's above my pay grade, and then you go ahead and make comments that are above your pay grade. So the Zach Martin comments about he may not be here next year. You're not the GM. Like, you are not Zach Martin to, if Zach Martin's planning on retiring, or if the Cowboys don't plan on having him back, like, that's just not your place on the team. And you just said that that wasn't your place when talking about McCarthy. So, and then also just the unnecessary comment of guys who have put in a lot more work throughout their career than Mike McCarthy ever has. Like, McCarthy's a Super Bowl winning head coach. You know, like, he's done something that you're trying to do. So regardless of how Mike McCarthy uh, is doing his job right now, to say something like that is kind of crazy. And
Kind of is an
yeah,
understatement.
yeah. So
And it sounds worse in the video. When you watch the video, like you could tell he really mean what he's saying. When he's like, man, I really feel bad. He said, I really feel bad for guys like Zach Martin though. Like that's who I'm really concerned with. I'm not concerned with Coach because he's like, because it was mentioned how it could be Mike McCarthy's last year. He's like, Coach can go. He can leave if he wants to because he can coach somewhere else or find something else. But I really feel for the guys like, and it's just like, damn, bro. So wait, right now in this moment, is everybody not right here? Like nobody should be in January 5th at this moment. He's thinking that this season is over. You know what I'm saying? Like we have lost. We have nothing to play for. So next year and beyond is what we're talking about right now. When in all reality, we should be talking about the distant future, maybe next week's game or the approach going into this next week. But to start talking about next year, like you mentioned, guys that might be there or not after saying I'm not qualified to talk about this, it just goes to show it goes to show that players want to be heard, and that's not a problem. That's not a problem. The problem is in which fashion they choose to make themselves heard. And here to me, this one is just like this is just throwing your coach under the bus, not being there for him, and being a bad teammate because now you're letting in some sort of bad smoke into the locker room, whether it's going to affect you for the rest of the season or not, and you can live with these comments. Maybe you just put maybe a young guy in position that whenever the microphone's in his face, they're going to be like, so how do you feel about Michael Parsons, best player on your team, talking about your head coach? So whose side are you going to choose? What do you even say? And you're just putting your teammates at a bind in a moment where everybody's supposed to say, you know what, we're at our lowest point. We didn't think as we were in a playoff, hosting a playoff game last year, winning our division, we didn't believe that, or they might have been, yeah, they won the division, right? The
yeah,
Cowboys, we don't believe that we were going to be here at this point of the season, week 10, week 11, looking at what the plans are for the offseason, right? Because so Michael Parsons, and then to talk about money, like you're gonna demand a gigantic check, and he's gonna be well deserved as far as his play. Michael Parsons is the best player, arguably, in the league on defense, right? Top 5 player in the league, arguably, but that does not give you the right to call out your coach or to act a certain way because you're upset at something. And I think it shows a lot about who you are as a person and a teammate. And so going into these contract negotiations, I would hope that that's something that teams try to leverage themselves at least a little bit with. And I don't know if that's a talking point for teams to, but it's like, hey, I mean, are you going to be, bought in? Are you going to crash out when we have a losing season? Like this might not all go perfectly every year. What are we getting from you as our franchise cornerstone that we're putting all this guaranteed money into? And so Jerry, obviously, he needs Micah. He don't care, like it is what it is. But I just think that's a bad look for them, and it's a sad way to go out. Us, Kevin, even sadder way to go out, an even sadder way to go out is by being a second year head coach and dying on a hill to kill your career about this guy named Joe Flacco. Like, you really, 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 really mean to tell me that the quarterback you drafted number 4 overall, who is a project, who is a known project, who is a known project to your boss because your general manager came out and said, don't rush this guys. You bench him because of disciplinary action. I get it. He taps out of a game, unheard of. What the fuck? He gets the 1 week off. Nope, this is not just, we're not benching him. Then you go to say, we're not benching him because of the tap, but it's deeper than that. You know, Joe gives us the best chance to win with his veteran leadership. Okay, whatever. Joe Flacco plays the Jaguars, has our worst offensive performance all season. Turns the ball over twice. Gets another start, 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions, 270 yards, which 70 of those yards were on the last drive where they were playing super deep prevent coverage, letting anything go underneath so that we could just end the game, essentially. And Joe Flacco is still the starting quarterback of this team. Now, a lot of speculation is coming out from Colts Twitter and stuff that Anthony Richardson might just have deeper issues that the Colts don't want to necessarily get into detail with or air out per se. And they're doing a bad job, if that's the case, of presenting the situation to the outer world. Because as fans, we don't necessarily deserve every explanation, but I think we deserve uh, more reasoning, and things have to make sense because Joe Flacco clearly doesn't give us the best chance to win. And I think that's pretty apparent. So for you to have seen this 2 games straight, watch the film on it, and stand on business saying that Joe's the guy until we say otherwise, he still gives us the best chance, veteran leadership. There has to be something more personal with Anthony Richardson going on where you guys don't believe in him. You guys don't think he's mature enough. Is he late? Is he a bad example? Something. So, yeah, I don't know if you have anything much on that, but I just had to get that out.
No, yeah, I mean, I think I'm a firm believer in let a guy sit and get used to things before throwing them out there. That being said, you threw him out there last year. He got hurt. And I could have even seen starting the season if they don't want to rush him back and let him take that time to sit down, get reused to the speed of the game. And because last year he looked good. He had a lot more moments last year through the 3 or 4 games that he played before he got hurt for the rest of the season. And his problem was staying healthy. Like, can he stay on the field? Because then if he could stay on the field, we could see what he actually looks like because we got glimpses that were really good. And now this year, aside from the Alec Pierce touchdown in week 1, there haven't been those moments. So um it's tough to sit a guy once you've already deemed him the starter and that guy for your franchise like they've done with Bryce Young in Carolina. But I'm a big believer in letting young quarterbacks who aren't ready sit and figure it out. And I think Flacco is a good quarterback to sit behind. That being said, good quarterback play from your team would probably put you guys in that 8-2 mix. Or the Jaguars game you guys lost was on the defense, I think, more than anything. 37-34 loss. Those games are going to happen. But you look at the last 3 losses, and those are all winnable games if you guys got anything from the quarterback position. And so yeah, I think those are tough losses to take uh when you when your quarterback is just not delivering. And it's much like the Jets last year where it's like defense is keeping you in games and you've got a great running back, you've got talent all over the field, but you don't have a guy who can get them the ball
Yeah,
and or who can keep you in games.
yeah.
Will throw you out of a game if anything. So that's it's tough to be in that position. And then going forward, I think if you're going to bench him, keep him on the bench for the rest of the season. Honestly, the seesaw I think is worse for a guy than just a decision of, hey, we're going to sit you. We believe in you. We just want you to be ready before we put you out there again. And I think if you have that conversation, Anthony Richardson seems like a great kid, and he seems like somebody who could get behind that process and understand it and fully embrace the role of being the number two guy behind Flacco for the rest of the season because they want to throw him out there when he's ready. He's got 2 more years after this one to see if they pick up that 5th year option. And if they do, then that means all things should have gone well. So uh I think he's got all the talent in the world. It's just a matter of putting it together because it is very raw talent. He started 13 games in college.
Yeah.
So I think that's something. Patience is going to be a big thing at that position. A lot of teams don't have patience these days. They want to win right away, and they expect a young kid to come in and provide that for them when he's just not ready. And we see it a lot with guys like, well, he hasn't been good, but Sam Darnold, like he's become somewhat formidable until he's not. But same thing with Geno Smith. Like these guys are showing that they looked incompetent and now have become somewhat competent. They're good QB2s. They're good backup quarterbacks, fringe starting quarterbacks. So um yeah, I think that's Anthony Richardson. Him
So
sitting could be beneficial for him.
I agree. I do. And I'm with you where you say, young guys need to sit. Two things jump out at me here though, 13 starts in college, I think you need to play. Like you just got to play at this point. That's the speed of the game is never going to get to you until you really really just step out there. And if you can afford to, because clearly Joe Flacco is not going to take us there. You know what I'm saying? Like we tried, and it's not to say I didn't believe he probably could at one point because he had good moments in the Steelers game. He had a good game when he came in for Anthony Richardson. We saw him struggle against the Jags when he finally started for us, but like
With the Jag game, he had a great game.
he had a great he had a good game. Okay, I'll give it to him. I'll give him the Jags game too. We've since seen 2 weeks of what Joe Flacco really is. Uh, and how this locker room has responded to this whole situation as a whole. I think that as much as I do also agree with the seesaw effect of like, yo, are you going to put him in? Are you going to sit him? What are we doing? Just get him back in there and give him the reps because the decision was not he needs to learn, he needs to sit. It's Joe Flacco gives us the best chance to win football games. And I can't get with that. Just as a Colts fan, and I don't know how people that aren't Colts fans but are watching the games see that Joe Flacco clearly is not the better option as far as being able to have that explosiveness, being able to make the big play, at any given point. Obviously, Joe Flacco can throw. He can make every throw. He can read a defense like the back of his hand. But I don't think Anthony Richardson takes a sack on 4th and 2 there last night, and like things of that nature as far as impacting the run game, who's going to keep it, JT or him. When you got Joe Flacco handing the ball off, there's no option. There's no, it's just stop the run or not. And I think we're limiting ourselves because of the fear of Anthony Richardson not being ready. When he's not. He's not ready, but he can make a play. And if he does, he great. If he doesn't, I mean, we're not expecting him to be great just yet. That's the luxury of having a number 4 overall pick who we've stressed to everybody that he only has 13 games of college. Use that. But now, as a head coach, and I'm like, that's my thing. I'm not arguing with you as how I see young quarterbacks coming into the league. This is a specific situation I disagree with wholeheartedly because you took him out for the fact that this guy gives you a better chance to win. After 2 weeks, you've seen what you're getting, and it's literally statistically been the worst offensive games of the season. To stand on it and say he still gives you the best chance to win, it sounds backwards. So you're either not saying something, and that's not our fault for assuming if you're not giving us that information, but ultimately that's on the coach. And if you're willing to take this bullet for Joe Flacco starting over Anthony Richardson, whether it's management, whether it's front ownership that wants to keep this, I mean, rest in peace, bro. You're gonna go outside. Like you're gonna go outside.
I will say though, like if the thought process behind it is something to the effect of he's not ready or we don't feel he's ready, coming out and saying that to the public and putting Anthony Richardson on blast essentially is not the best idea either. So certain things I think when the thought process is something that needs to be kept in house, respectfully, like you can't the fans like fuck the fans. We
Yeah,
can't,
no,
you know what
I
I
hear
mean?
that.
Like we're because affecting Anthony Richardson by putting him out there, maybe he thinks maybe that's not what he thinks, but putting it out there to the public, maybe that's the first time Anthony Richardson is hearing something like that. Like we don't think he's ready.
Yeah,
So certain things I think do need to be you know kept in house, and whether the fans obviously support the team and are going to want the information, but also certain things just can't be
yeah,
talked about.
and I get it. It's fair, and I'm not asking for an explanation. But what I am asking for is the better quarterback to play. That's as a fan as much as I can do because you're telling me one has a better chance to win with us than the other. And from the sample size that I've seen using my Sundays to watch football, I see it a bit differently. I'm not the head coach though, so of course I'm not doing film for 14 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not gonna act like Shane Steichen isn't qualified to make this decision. I'm not. I'm not. But as a passionate football fan, I do get my arguments, and I do get to say what the fuck we're seeing from Joe Flacco that we can't see. Anthony Richardson can throw 3 picks. We've seen that. We can do that. He can throw 60-yard bomb. He can throw RPO. He can run the ball. He can. So it's like I don't know. Give him his fucking chance, bro. But enough on the Colts talk. I don't know that we're gonna have much more of it the rest of the season because I'm sick and tired of it. But I might use some of my money to go see those boys. They come into town next week. You were talking about the Jets earlier and saying that the expectation last year wasn't as much because they didn't have that quarterback that could go and win them something. Well, they thought they had that this year, and apparently it hasn't necessarily proven true for a multitude of reasons. It's not just Aaron Rodgers, but it's certainly not just everybody else. And I think that he is a big part of the culture in the locker room right now and the state of the Jets. Uh, and I also believe that coaching, and this is just going back to our text message, coaching was an issue and they did need to get rid of Salah. And they just still have to figure out who else they need to get rid of in that locker room until this is all weeded out. Kev, I don't have a question for you, but I guess I do. After watching yesterday and where we thought, look at this, just popped in my head because the talk of everything before yesterday was like, hey man, Jets go and run this table, man. Jets going, schedule's looking a little sweet, man. I mean, we get a good 6-1 right here. And I'm not saying like I was just hearing that kind of talk coming from, talk about the Jets. Hey, they got a good schedule for the rest of the stretch. I mean, hey, they could anything's possible because they're just, wanted to be in the playoffs so bad. After watching that performance yesterday, what do you feel? What do you say? What do you think about, Jets right now?
The season
And can you
ended
confirm it's over, right? Okay.
yeah, season ended yesterday at halftime. Like it's so annoying. That's that's the most I could like. That's the best way I could put it. It's annoying. Like you've got all the talent that on paper, this is the most talented team that the New York Jets have had since I've been a Jets fan. And you got Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Fame quarterback, Devontae Adams, potential Hall of Fame receiver. You got Garrett Wilson, young and up and coming superstar at receiver. You got up and coming superstar at running back with Brees Hall. You solidified the offensive line. Like, what is going on? What can they not figure out? I don't understand it. It's been the most annoying football season of all time for me, even worse than last year. Last year, at least we knew it was over 4 plays in because Zach Wilson came in, and even though there were those questions when he performed well, when he still beat Buffalo, when he beats Philadelphia, gives them their first loss, has a great game against Kansas City. It's like, oh, can Zach Wilson? He couldn't. Uh, but this season was supposed to be the year with Rodgers coming back. And maybe that's the problem. Like maybe we expected too much of a 40-year-old coming back from an Achilles injury, but the guy was throwing footballs last year before the season was over. Like he was on the practice field before the season was over. So it's like this guy can do anything. Like it's that false hope that comes with being a Jets fan. My lights are blue today because it's a sad day because football season is over for me. But we'll be back at it in the offseason. I'm sure something will happen in the offseason that'll make me reinvest myself like I do every year. Uh, I will tell you, if they hire Rex Ryan again, I am all in. Jets winning the Super Bowl because I know that's the energy he will have. But realistically, I'm not even joking. That's what the Jets need. The Jets need a quarterback who demands greatness. And Rex Ryan, day in and day out, demanded you to be the best that you could be and said that regardless of what anybody thought, truly believed the Jets would win the Super Bowl every year. And I think the Jets need a head coach like that. Like Salah, I don't think he was near the issue. I think all you did was create a circus around that situation by firing him. I don't think he was that big of an issue to get rid of. Uh, Now look at the defense. The defense has been awful since they fired him because Ulbrich is now the head coach of the team, takes away from the defense as he's the coordinator as well. So it's just like you put the team in a terrible situation. You lose that game to Buffalo. You go and first of all, your kicker has cost you 3 games. Also, like your kickers cost you three. Like this season has been the most annoying season for these reasons. Like you're 6-4 if your kicker doesn't cost you 3 games, and we're having a different discussion on how deflating that loss was, but you're still in the playoff spot. Um, but yeah, I mean everything broke right for you this weekend after you just looked great in the second half against Houston. Apparently, they looked great all week in practice. Everything looked sharp in practice. Uh, Locker room was loose. You get Indy, Denver, Cincinnati. Every team in front of you loses. Everything was breaking your way, and you come out and put up your worst game of the year by far. Not a game that's close to being worse than that. Like that's the worst performance that you can possibly deliver in that scenario. And yeah, that was ugly. I stopped watching at halftime. I was over it. It was just I was on a flight back home from Toronto, and I gave up. Yeah, I gave up on the game at that point, and just enjoyed the rest of the flight.
Hey man, Jets, they got to pack it up. Next year they got to figure it out. And what I can't agree with you on about the coach Salah thing, because I know we have our differences, is that it wasn't necessary that they fired him in this moment. Now, do I believe he was a part of this issue? Do I believe that he is a fireable coach by the end of the season? 100%. Did they have to do it right when they did it? I think it was bad timing. I could see that there. So, um, hey, bad timing or good timing for the Hurricanes to lose their first game here. Let's talk about college football, man. We played Georgia Tech, and I don't think it's ever good timing to lose a game. And I also don't ever think it's good timing for the Hurricanes to play Georgia Tech. But in this case, I do think it's a bit of good timing for the Hurricanes to catch that first L here and not during bowl season, not in the playoff. Do it because it was ugly, right? It was a bad L. It wasn't a respectable L. It wasn't a close game L. It wasn't a I mean it was a close game in a sense, but it wasn't one of those down to the wires, and it was in a sense. However, it just felt a little different here. Like we never really was gonna win. Like we never really got that. And the last touchdown to X Man was great. The defensive stop at the end was amazing, but Cam Ward didn't throw a pick all day. So the inevitable turnover was coming, right? I think that was kind of what was happening, and Cam Ward decision making is going to be so key to our success down the stretch. Not necessarily just versus Wake Forest or Syracuse coming up for the last two games, but God willing in that ACC championship game, and again, God willing, in the first round of that college football playoff. Boy, we're going to have more mature, more detailed play from Cam Ward if we want to win a serious ball game. It's at a point where, as much as we love him, I mean, I give him all the credit in the world for what he's been able to do for himself, and for his team. But boy, oh boy, he's also doing it to himself and his team. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure it's a conversation he's had with his coaches a million times this season. But something's not clicking, and that might be a part of his game that's going to lead to later trouble in his career. But I'm not here to talk about the negatives of Cam Ward right now. He's having an amazing season, leading the college football, I guess league or whatever in yards, touchdowns. He let this one get away, made some bad decisions, and also wasn't able to see things the right way, or the timing was just off with the offense all day. But that defense and that defensive front giving up almost 300 yards of running to a team that only runs the ball either this way or that way. I mean, so who do you blame here on this loss, Kev?
I think everybody can get a little bit of blame on this one. Uh, I think the defense played better than they played in past weeks, which is not saying much, but they played better than they've been playing, so that's an encouraging sign, I guess, that they were a little bit better. You want to see that every week, just be better than you were last week. So, um, again, not much more place to go in terms of being bad, but um, the defense has been bad. They have given up the only teams that have given up more points than them are NC State, Stanford, and Florida State, who are combined 4-12, or I'm sorry, 4-16, combined 4-16 in the ACC. The only reason that you're not down there with them is because you now have a quarterback who has helped lead the offense to be the best in the nation to this point in terms of yards per game and uh, just overall offense. But you're gonna have to start games better, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, you're digging yourself a hole in the first half, and even sometimes going into the fourth quarter. We saw it against Cal and against Virginia Tech. Like, those games don't those games don't end up close games when you get to play the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. So they know how to keep their foot on your neck,
Yeah,
uh, not like a Cal would, or a Virginia Tech, or one of these teams that Miami's been having to come back against. It did feel like that year Florida. It feels like that year Florida State with Jameis, where they did the same thing all year. Was just,
magical.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
but and that's how it felt going into this, like, going into these games. Is you're digging yourself a hole, and you're good enough to dig yourself out of it, but at some point it comes to the point where you can't dig yourself out of that hole anymore, and that's what the Hurricanes are going to have to stop doing. They're going to have to start games better, and then I mean, keep doing what you're doing in the second half. They couldn't get it done this past week against Georgia Tech, but uh the second half has been great for them
Definitely.
before this Georgia Tech game. So if you can figure out how to start games better and have a better first half, you'll avoid these Georgia Tech games.
Yeah, I think a lot of credit is due to Georgia Tech's pass defense. I mean, they had our guys in check for most of the game. Cam Ward still threw a good game. Like, if you look at the stats are going to tell you a different story, and that's why it's not always good. We know that, but we didn't play well this game. We didn't execute on offense. The offense didn't look like the 40-point per game offense, number one offense in the nation, led by the Heisman Trophy front runner going into Saturday. It didn't feel like that. And so, again, I do think it was good timing in the loss as far as this being a wake-up call for the team, this being something to show them like, well, now we're looking at we can't really lose anymore, and now we kind of got to win that ACC championship. So that's up to y'all. But thankfully, in a season where we lost, we still have a chance at an ACC championship and at a college football playoff berth. So um, I again, like I said, rather the loss now than in a game where it really, really matters. But just another takeaway, to piggyback off of starting early, I think, and I don't know this for a fact. This is not a statistical thing. I do think that this team sometimes plays a bit down to their opponent. And I think that they play with the swagger and the confidence that we love about them. But they also got to understand that they got to bring the will and the want as well. And that's what's going to separate them and keep them from, we're the way better team. Not because we're just beating you based on our talent, because you can do that, but you can also lose because you got talented guys on that side of the ball too. You got talented guys over there. You got to have to want to come in and win and whoop ass. And we haven't necessarily seen that. I haven't personally seen that. And I think it shows by the way we start games that we get into more of a frenzy mode, into more of a, let me sit up in my chair, let me stop playing around with y'all because we're good 5-star, 4-star athletes. But if we came into the game like, yo, 2002 we about to smack these boys first drive and they're not scoring when they get the ball. And we're going up 14. What's up? Like, that attitude needs to come out for the rest of the season because if you think SMU is a threat, if you think Clemson is a threat, we have no shot. And so we got to go handle business the next 2 weeks, give ourselves the best chance to for the college football guys to bless us, put us in the ACC championship, win that game, and then kind of just go with the flow. Now we're not. Now we're you win the ACC championship. Obviously, you're a top seed, so you get that home field first round bye, which is a luxury. And I don't think that we find our way in the college football playoff or the loser of the ACC championship. I don't think they find their way into the college football playoff, especially with the weekend that we had this past weekend.
Yep. And they've got, I think, Wake Forest next on the schedule, who
Yeah.
at that point could be playing for one more game in just a bowl, just to be bowl eligible. So they're gonna come out, I'm sure, motivated, and like you said, you got to come out like those teams from the early 2000s used to come out, just ready to beat somebody and
Yeah.
keep your foot on their neck
Yeah.
for the full 60 minutes.
Hey, we got a couple more things we'll touch on before we get out of here. UGA, University of Georgia. I mean, they get upset. Ole Miss had an amazing performance against them, and Lane Kiffin's probably biggest win of his college football coaching career. Ole Miss storms the field after the game. We got Georgia players or a Georgia player celebrating with an Ole Miss fan. Kirby Smart calling him out and saying stupid. Called his own player stupid, which I don't disagree with him there. We lost. You sitting here fucking laughing with the ops like shouldn't even be on his team. And that's SEC law. But they've got bigger fish to fry than this kid dancing around with one of his Ole Miss homies. Like, this Georgia team, to me, is done. Uh, they've had far too many chances. And Kev, I know the college football playoff committee tomorrow. The show is going to come on, and we got about 5 more weeks of this. They're going to keep Georgia at least a little in the loop, right? They're gonna. You could smell Georgia around, but I don't know if what they did on Saturday is gonna allow them to be resurrected anymore. I mean, Carson Beck goes down. You see the backup come in, play well. Carson Beck comes back. I said Carson Beck. Excuse me. I'm talking about Jackson Dart. Excuse me for Ole Miss. Jackson Dart goes down. Backup comes in, and Dart comes back in and plays a good game. Carson Beck continues to struggle. He has like 12 turnovers in the last 6 games. He threw, was it 3 interceptions or 2 interceptions on Saturday with a fumble lost. So everything has gone from bad to worse, and the UGA defense is just exhausted at this point. I mean, they can't win every game for them, and we saw this in the Texas game where Quinn Ewers struggled mightily, and that defense swarmed. They put Arch Manning in the game for a second and was like, nah, we got to put Ewers back in. Carson Beck threw a good 2 interceptions or so in that game, but the defense was so stifling that they were able to score. They were able to win and take that win for the Bulldogs. But when their defense can't come through, like they do every single week, and they need their quarterback to step up and be the first round, expected pick, and they're not getting that, I think you got a bad look. This Georgia offense is bad. This Georgia offense is so bad. You have
Yeah,
any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on Georgia if their season's done or what's going on?
I don't think their season's done because although Alabama did beat them outside of that loss, they have the worst loss between them and Georgia, and they're both two-loss teams in the SEC. Uh, they got a chance to bounce back against Tennessee in their next game. Not this week. I think it's next Saturday that they play, but that to me is going to be a big game for them. If they lose that game, they're done. But I think with this 12-team playoff now, two losses doesn't get you out of there. Not at this point yet. I think they've got two more games on their schedule, plus possibly
For
an SEC.
SEC and
Right.
Big Ten teams.
Yes. Correct. Yeah. Of course. If you're losing in two in the ACC or
Big 12.
the Big 12,
Over.
you're out of there.
All right.
But but yeah. So I think they've got they've still got a shot. You obviously got to win out. Hope you have a shot to make the SEC championship game, which there is still a chance for them to do so.
Right.
But yeah, shout out Austin Simmons, also the backup for Ole Miss. He is a Broward County guy and or kid, Broward County kid, and also pitches for the baseball team.
Really?
I've had the pleasure of meeting him and taking some pictures for him. So that was cool to see him come in and hold his own for those few plays that he was able to come in for and play. So shout out to him.
Yeah, man. Any more shout outs you want to do, Kev, since we on shout outs? I mean, I
Uh,
nah, go ahead.
no, it's been a couple of weeks since I've been here. I've been in and out traveling, so a lot has happened. I just want to say, fifth innings no longer exist, and that's all I got, really.
Kev, we really haven't spoken much in the last few weeks, like you mentioned. And, as your friend, bro, I admire your work ethic. And this is serious. Obviously it's gonna take a turn. But this is serious and it's sincere. I do admire your work ethic. I admire how you have, just gone for it. And at the sound of, yo, I'm ready for your opportunities, right? But like to not have heard from you from that World Series to really now, it's pretty fucking crazy. It's pretty crazy. I gave EP a little bit of it when we came on for that first episode. I was like, it's pretty funny. We didn't record all World Series for real. Like we whatever happened on my side personally, his side personally, we didn't get the episodes off. But here we are. I had my moment with him, and I had my moment with you. You reminded me, so thank you. How bad of a fifth inning that was for you all. And I'm just here to say, Aaron Boone will be the manager of the Yankees next season. So strap up.
I mean, I well, all we gotta do is resign Soto. First of all, if you don't resign Soto, I'm pissed because we're the Yankees. Money's not an issue. But I will say, uh, the thing that sucks the most about that whole situation is I really do believe and Dave Roberts out of his own mouth said as much. If they
Oh
win, if
yeah, whatever.
you get out of that fifth inning, you win that game and you get out of it not giving up a run. Like you're winning that, you should win that game, no problem at that point. If you get out of that jam, all the momentum's on your side, everything's breaking your way, and you go into LA, you're the best road team in baseball all year long, and you didn't win a game in one or two in LA. I think you at least win game 6 and force a game 7, and then things get crazy. and
Yeah.
we could have done all wrongs in 2004 if we would have come back
Must I
down 3-0 in
remind
the
you,
World
Kev?
Series.
Must I remind you, Garrett Cole is not like that. Anthony
Listen,
Rizzo is not like that.
Garrett Cole was very like that.
He pitched his ass off. But we see in moments what separates those from them. Now, we never end the podcast on no Yankees bullshit. We already know that. Appreciate y'all who have been rocking for years understanding that. So I just want to give one more shout out, and it's going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. 11-0, best start in franchise history. What they've got going on, Jared Allen coming back into the fold, playing great defense, leading the NBA in the defense that Cavs team is. Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are kind of just picking up where they left off there in the playoffs last year. It's going to be pretty fun to see what this East shapes out to be. We'll talk more basketball on our later show this week. EP hopefully will be back with us. Kev, we'll hope to have you back if you're not too busy. Appreciate you for this one. If you're listening now or later, thank you very much. Everybody have a